This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone. I am pleased to welcome everyone to today's Audit Committee, Governance Committee, and regular meetings of the Hudson River Black River Regulating District here at our Sacandaga Field Office in Mayfield. And to those board members and members of the public participating both here and virtually as well. The agendas are available at hrbrrd.newyork.gov under board meetings. We ask that you please close other programs on your computer or phone, silence your cell phone, and mute your audio when not speaking. The conference organizer will monitor the program's chat function for public comment. I'd like to call this meeting of the Audit Committee to order. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, now I gotta get my notes here. Doggy bag.
Missing the pop.
Yeah. Just bear with me here for a second.
I'll go forward with the roll call. Committee Chair Albert Hayes.
Here.
Committee Member Kenneth DeWitt.
Here.
Committee Member Richard Byrd.
I'm here.
Board Chair Mark Finkel excused. Board Member Timothy Reagan excused. Board Member Nicole Allen.
Here.
Executive Director John Callahan.
Here.
General Counsel Robert Leslie here. Chief Engineer Robert Fultan.
Here.
Chief Fiscal Officer Timothy Medici.
Here.
And Compliance Officer Stephanie Rizicki.
Here.
Board Member Alfred Cadino.
Here.
Thank you. All accounted for.
Okay, thank you. Now we will have a motion to adopt or revise the meeting agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. DeWitt.
At first, do I have a second?
There's 1, 2.
Mr. Byrd.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Could I have the approval of the April 12th, 2022 Audit Committee meeting minutes? Anybody make a motion to that?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. DeWitt first. Anyone would like to make a second?
Mr. Byrd.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And we will go to committee business. Under new business, we have a motion to approve in advance to the full board a resolution approving BPAS to perform GASB 75 evaluation for fiscal year ending June 30, 2022. Mr. Medici?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The BPAS engagement letter begins on page 4, and the resolution begins on page 18 of your packet. GASB statement number 75 relates to accounting and reporting on the estimated costs of other post-employment benefits. The regulating district implemented this standard 2 years ago. That implementation requires a new actuarial evaluation, not just an update of a previous one every 2 years. BPAS has satisfactorily conducted 4 actuarial evaluations for the regulating district in 2011, 2014, 2017, and 2020. We therefore ask the board to approve a resolution authorizing an agreement with BPAS in the amount of $8,500, $6,500 of which will be spent in fiscal year 2022-23, and $2,000 of which will be spent in fiscal year 2023-24. And I am happy to answer any questions you have about this proposal or any related topics.
Does anyone have any questions? Hearing none, I'd like to have a motion to approve in advance to the full board resolution.
I'll make that motion.
Kenny has it first. Anyone want to make a second? Bird?
You second that, Mr. Byrd?
I'm not on that committee. Can I second it?
You are on that committee.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I am? Okay, I'll second it.
We got you.
You're in a lot of it.
Quality, not quantity.
That's right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion to approve to advance to the full board. And as now, we ask for an adjournment. Would you like to make a motion for that adjournment?
I will.
Mr. Byrd? Anybody second it?
I'll second it.
Mr. DeWitt? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the meeting of the audit committee is adjourned.
We are now at 10:15. Moving on to governance.
Here, you want the gavel?
No, that's just,
Mr. Candido,
if you look at, drive it over to him.
we can dispense with the pledge.
No pledge. The meeting of the governance committee of September 13th is hereby called to order. Mr. Leslie, roll call, please.
Committee member, acting committee chair Albert Candido.
Here.
Committee members Kenneth DeWitt,
Here?
Albert Hayes,
Here.
and Nicole Allen.
Here?
Board chair Mark Finkel is excused. Board member Timothy Regan is excused. Board member Richard Byrd
Here.
here. Executive director John Callahan.
Here.
General counsel Robert Leslie here. Chief engineer Robert Fulton.
Here.
Chief fiscal officer Timothy Minicha.
Here.
Compliance officer Stephanie Rizicki.
Here.
All accounted for.
Thank you. We need a motion to adopt and revise the agenda for today's meeting. Can I have a motion, please?
I will make that motion.
Going to extend the ground lease of the water and water usage agreement at Stillwater. There's a resolution that'll go after the first thing on the agenda.
And I need a second on that, please.
I'll make that second.
Thank you. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstained? Thank you. It's approved. I now need a motion to approve the July 12th, 2022 committee meeting minutes.
Make that motion.
Allen?
I will second that motion.
Mr. Hayes?
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Good. Thank you. Under committee business, we have two resolutions to forward to the full board. The first resolution authorizes the executive director to implement certain organizational changes and salary grade adjustments. Mr. Callahan, if you would.
Thank you. And council, we'll do the hand carried item last on the agenda, the third item?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Candido, members, committee members of the board. As we've discussed with the board over the course of the last year, including some of the new members of the board, the departure of the former administrator of the Hudson River Black River Regulating District afforded the organization to make certain changes, realignments, and adjust the distribution of tasks and duties across the organization. We have, with the board's support and leadership, implemented many of those changes over the past year or so, and now, again, a slightly revised proposal as it pertains to the certain senior members of the staff ready to go back to the board on, and that would be a realignment with new duties assigned to the chief fiscal officer and the chief engineer of their salary grade. That would be a 1 grade increase to an M4, and a realignment of the duties historically associated with the compliance officer, additional duties in terms of procurement and other special projects to the current compliance officer, and a realignment of that office title as Director of Administrative Services. I've had a chance to speak to members of the board about this directly, answered several questions, and so agree, certainly willing to do that again now. Absent any, I would ask for the committee's support on this measure.
Are there any questions of Mr. Callahan?
None.
None.
Thank you. Thank you. I fully support this resolution, and I'll entertain a motion to accept this resolution, adopt this resolution, and move it to the full board for their action. Motion, please.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. DeWitt?
I'll
We have a
second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Any abstain? Thank you. We have the collection of board members' confidential evaluations of board performance. Mr. Leslie, can you please explain?
Sure. The Authority Budget Office requires us by September 30th, which is 90 days after the end of our fiscal year, each year to do a confidential evaluation of board performance. Each board member determines for themselves whether they agree, somewhat agree, disagree, or somewhat disagree with each of, I think it's 11 or 12 different criteria. I already have responses from 5 of the 7 board members. Those responses will be aggregated and the individual responses will be kept under my lock and key, so nobody knows what everybody else thinks about it. In the aggregate, we will report out at a future governance committee meeting whether everybody agreed or did not agree to those particular elements. Everybody present has already responded.
Mr. Leslie, I sent you an email just prior to this meeting starting.
I saw that and I included you as those who responded. If it's okay with you, I'll just mark a sheet, put your name on it, and aggregate with the rest.
Yes, please, would you? Thank you. Do we need to take any action on this, Mr. Leslie?
There is no action to take. In fact, while we used to have to send this aggregated response to the authority's budget office, we no longer do. So it's basically just for our understanding of taking the temperature of the board, what they feel we are doing for them and not doing for them.
Okay, thank you. Then I'll move to the final order, the final item of business, which would be a groundwater extension on the lease at the Stillwater Associates, the Stillwater Dam. And Mr. Leslie, please.
So the original ground lease and water usage agreement dated October 21st of 85, which was to end in 2016, was extended for 15 years. It then was extended a series of times. The most recent extension took that agreement through September 30th of 2022. As we are negotiating the end of that agreement, which requires the board to purchase the plant at Stillwater, and we're trying to determine what that purchase price would be through a negotiation, and the negotiation backed by appraisals by either party. We've come to an impasse and find we need to come to a third appraiser in order to determine a final value. As such, the parties have agreed to extend that ground lease and water usage agreement an additional 3 months to December 31st of 2022. This resolution approves that 5th amendment to that original ground lease and water usage agreement. such that we have authority to continue to collect the rent from them and provide the water to them. Basically just need a motion to advance to the full board and recommend adoption of that resolution, extending the agreement out through the 31st.
What happens if we're still very far apart after this one?
That is a distinct possibility that we are unable to complete the third appraisal in that time. If the third appraiser determines that neither of the appraisals produced are adequate, or the documentation underlying either of those appraisers is inadequate, or ultimately the appraiser comes up with a number that the board is just not willing to pay. Those are all possibilities. And in that event, it would require a mutual consent of both parties to further extend the agreement, probably at the December meeting, extend it another 3 months, another 6 months, etc. There is a purchase power agreement underlying the sale of power by Stillwater Associates to National Grid. That extends through 2029 and provides the seller, in this case, what we believe to be an above market rate for power, so that they can continue to make money while we negotiate this agreement. They may not see it that way, but that's the way we see it. Ultimately, I think John and I agree that if the board does not find the figure determined through negotiation and backed by the appraisals to be adequate, then we would be in a position where the board would not move forward with the purchase, probably be in breach of that original agreement. And the question is what the damages would be for that breach.
Yeah, let me just add to that, if I may. Certainly, this has been a journey. We really don't want to buy these improvements. We have an agreement that is decades old. As extended, it says that we must. The latest round of negotiations with Stillwater Associates was pretty contentious, to say the least. And I think it is good that we're moving forward with the third appraisal. But at the end of the day, even if the board were okay with the number, if that number is not supported by an independent fair market appraisal, the comptroller is not going to approve the contract. So we are, we've got the agreement, right, Counselor? We've got the law, which is kind of important. We've got the board's discretion and fiduciary responsibility. So this is an interesting issue, and we're, we have. There's been a lot of bluster, maybe on the other side, but we got a guy that can get in there and bluster with the best of them. So we're hopeful that this effort can reconcile these two works, and the independent appraisals, or I guess more than two, as on the Stillwater Associates side, and point out the holes in each and come up with a number that is reasonable as far as our opinion and defensible, and we can move forward, and then of course move forward in an attempt to identify a future operator, for which the power purchase agreement Mr. Leslie cites could be very useful if we can get a guarantee that it applies to it.
Right.
successor in interest. So lots of fun with this one. Our hope is that this will allow us to bring a recommendation back to the board before the end of the year. And if not, we'll have to speak to the board, obviously, about what it would like to do.
Okay. If there's any other questions? If not, I'll take a motion to adopt this resolution and move it to the full board.
Let me make that motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Hayes, Mr. DeWitt.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion's passed. There's no other business on the agenda, then we'll move to adjournment. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Hayes, Mr. DeWitt.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Governance Committee is adjourned.
You're up. Out of the bullpen.
I'd like to call the regular board meeting of September 13th to order. Roll call, Mr. Leslie.
Board Chair Mark Finkel excused. Second Vice Chair Kenneth DeWitt acting as the board chair today.
Here.
Board members Albert Hayes.
Here.
Richard Byrd.
Here.
Nicole Allen.
Here?
Alfred Candido Jr.
Here.
And Timothy Reagan is excused. Executive Director John Callahan.
Here.
General Counsel Robert Leslie here. Chief Engineer Robert Fulton.
Here.
Chief Fiscal Officer Timothy Minicha. Here. And Compliance Officer Stephanie Rizicki.
Here.
Actually, yeah, still compliance. All accounted.
Can I have a motion to adopt a revised meeting agenda?
I'll make that motion.
That would be to reflect consideration of the resolution authorizing the extension of the ground lease and water usage agreement at Stillwater
I'll second.
as part of the governance report. Mr. Hayes, Mr. Allen.
Any discussion? I think we've had that. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved. I guess there's no guests, no public comment period.
Let me just ask if for anyone listening by phone, our board administrator in Watertown, have you received any requests for any public comment?
I have not.
Thank you.
Can I have approval of the July 12th, 2022 regular board meeting minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Hayes,
I'll second.
Ms. Allen,
Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved. Report of the Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report appears on pages 42 and 43. In deference to our robust agenda today, I will just note a couple of things. One, our open house on August 20th here at the Sacandaga field office. I want to thank everybody who played an active role in putting that together. Ms. Rizicki certainly took a laboring oar in that effort. All the team here really contributed in a big way to what I think everybody would agree was a huge success. It was well attended, estimated 200 to 300 people, and among those people were our very own Mr. Hayes and our very own Mr. DeWitt. So we appreciate that very much. So an important thing, I think, to communicate, interact directly with people certainly around the reservoir, something we hope to replicate in the future. So appreciate all the effort on that. Mr. Leslie has spoken this morning about our negotiations with Stillwater Associates. He may address a little bit the status of our negotiations with Brookfield and the agreement for EJ West. And suffice to say, it would not be easy to make the negotiations with Stillwater Associates seem good by comparison but that may very well be where we're at. So we hope to hear some more from council on that. And I just want to note also in closing, Mr. Chairman, on the issue of safety, there have been just a rash, it seems, this year on area waterways of drownings. Certainly after the number of drownings had dropped in recent years. Certainly one of those here on Great Sacandaga Lake, and so we have been working very much in cooperation with our Safe Lake Initiative partners, local law enforcement, the Craig Family Foundation, the Henry D. Ross III Memorial Foundation, and we're looking to strengthen and enhance that relationship further and identify additional measures that we can take just as neighbors here and co-owners of the issue of safety with so many other partners, because it is absolutely imperative that when people enjoy these bodies of water, they can do so safely. So we'll be talking more about that in the future. With that, I'll pause and ask if any of the members have any questions.
I just like to make some comments. I think the people on the lake this year has been terrible. I don't think they know the rules and regulations of boating. I just give way to everybody because they have no idea who has the right of way, and especially these sea doers. I don't think they have licenses. I don't think they have anything, and even the boaters have no idea. They've got brand new boats, brand new sea doos, and they're going unbelievable.
Well, not to forecast too much, Mr. Dewey, one of the things we're thinking about, and actually more than that, talking to our Safe Lake Initiative partners about, is hosting boater safety courses here at the Sacandaga Field Office. With the change in the law, most people are now required to take a course, and finding courses, we wouldn't give the course, but was simply hosted. Sometimes just the venue is an issue, so maybe in some small way, we can help address. I think that's something that we've all noticed along with you, and certainly heard about from our residents and users of the reservoirs.
I think there's one thing that maybe we could post at all the boat areas where they put the boat in is I've got a little thing that says, somebody coming from your right, or somebody coming from your left, or somebody coming from behind you. It's just a pie shape, who has the right of way, and maybe if they put the boat in, then just take a look at it.
If you're looking at a red running light, you do not have the right of way. It should be pretty easy. Thank you, sir.
Okay, contracts and actions. A resolution authorizing the executive director to enter a lease for space located on the 5th floor of the 54 State Street, Albany, New York building. Hopefully this will be a little bit longer than the last couple of leases.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My memo appears on page 44, and this is an issue we've been speaking to the board about for some time, as it looked like the building that we occupy now, Kiernan Plaza in Albany, the former train station, would be sold or at least marketed for sale. And that process continues. And there is some question right now about whether or not that sale has been consummated. Certainly a successful bidder was identified, and those negotiations are at some stage, and we don't know exactly what. We have tried to get from SUNY Poly, essentially, Fuller Road Management, who's our landlord there, a good sense of when we need to vacate the building. And that's been a little bit fluid, but we know that day is coming, because we know that this is not a building that they see themselves being the stewards of a long time. And that's one of the reasons why we did get very attractive terms moving there from 350 Northern Boulevard. However, those attractive terms came at a price, and we knew that our existence there would be a little tenuous, and it may have been a little tenuous for a decade or more. As it turns out, it has not been. So as we continue to get clarity, we recognize that we may be on a very short leash, and so that it was better to control our own destiny. We have looked at a number of options in downtown Albany. I want to thank everybody at the Hudson River area office, especially the members of the senior management team, Mr. Leslie and Mr. Fulton, that have taken several site visits with us, and most especially Mr. Manicha, who has identified several properties to look at and has crunched the numbers exhaustively to try and look at not just the least expensive option, and this turns out to be the second least expensive option, but the least expensive option that is an operational fit for what we do. So we have identified that, as my memo details, in 54 State Street in Albany, and we would ask for the board's approval in entering into an agreement to occupy that space under the terms specified in the resolution. With that, I'll pause for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Moving forward, resolution to authorize.
We need a. I'm sorry.
Do we need a resolution?
Well, yes, we need to authorize the executive director to.
Oh, okay. Can I have a resolution? Motion?
I'll make that motion.
Ms. Allen?
Second?
I would second that.
Mr. Hayes?
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved.
Let's just hope the elevator doesn't stop. Everybody's got to look at
Boy.
The elevator was a question at one of the properties we looked at.
Not this one.
And the elevator moves a little slowly once I'm aboard, so we wanted to make sure.
Good exercise.
Part of the wellness.
Yeah, no doubt.
So we went from one store to this. Now we're on the third. Now we'll go to the fifth. So we'll get there.
Got Corning Tower.
The term
Before we all retire.
The term moving on up.
My office in Manhattan was on the 9th floor. There's 2 floors above the ladder.
Oh, really?
And so I always had a rope in there. And getting on an elevator there, I think the elevator dropped 2 or 3 stories. Felt like it went down 9 stories, but stopped. But I witnessed people with the elevators opening on the ground floor, and people tumbling out were literally laying on top of each other because it went down like 5 stories or something like that. Wow.
There's comfort.
Yeah.
Before state ever mentioned. Under
actions, resolution to authorize sole source procurement to replace shaft on gate number 4 at the Stillwater Dam. Mr. Fulton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I find the resolution on page 47, requesting authorization for the sole source procurement to replace shaft on gate 4 at Stillwater Dam. In summary, during a maintenance inspection this past July, field staff at Stillwater Dam identified the bent shaft and coupling on gate 4. To ensure safe and reliable operation of the gate, it's recommended that the shaft coupling and the shaft guide be replaced and repaired. This shaft and ancillary parts are proprietary equipment and should be supplied by the original equipment manufacturer to guarantee their proper operation. And so staff recommends procurement of the parts from Rodney Hunt for a cost not to exceed $16,090. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Does that mean that something's going to be open? Is the dam going to be open or closed? Or
that gate right now is dewatered and unavailable for use. And we hope to get the parts and make the repair before winter weather sets in, so that we can re-water, pull the bulkhead gate, and get that gate back in operation in time for possible use in the late fall and certainly by springtime.
So can I have a motion to for the resolution to authorize sole source procurement to replace shaft on gate number 4 at the Stillwater Dam for a price not exceeding $16,090.
I will make that motion.
I will.
I'll second.
Mr. Hayes, Ms. Allen?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved. Resolution to approve 8th Amendment to contract CO 12012 with Klingenschmidt Associates. Mr. Fultan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My memo is on page 49. The district's contract with Klein Schmidt for final design and construction phase services, specifically developed to include a limited number of site visits, which were going to be supplemented by regulating district staff construction observation efforts. And coming out of our discussions with DEC at the end of last year, DEC Dam Safety, their recommendation was for full-time on-site construction observation by the construction engineer, Kleinschmidt. After some discussion and coming to a mutual agreement, we expanded the construction engineer on-site construction observation activities, not to full-time, but over what had originally been proposed and included in the contract documents between the district and Kleinschmidt. And Kleinschmidt finds this additional scope of work necessary to meet DEC's expectations for increased construction observation activities, includes development of an implementation and monitoring plan for additional site visits and development and submission of construction engineer signed and sealed construction records upon completion of the work. And their proposal is attached to my memo. Staff recommends acceptance of Kleinschmidt's Amendment 8 additional construction engineering support proposal and seeks board authorization to amend contract C01-2012 to include the scope of work and fee proposed in their proposal, and seeks authorization for the executive director to execute an amendment to increase the contract price by $34,300 to a total contract price of $274,264. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Can I have a resolution to approve the 8th Amendment to contract? Is it C0 or CO?
C0.
C012012 with Kleinschmidt Associates for a contract price of $274,264.
I'll make that motion.
Ms. Allen?
Second.
I'll second that.
Mr. Hayes?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved. Can I have a resolution approving a cash payout of unused annual sick leave and contribution to health insurance premiums to Timothy Harwood upon retirement? Mr. Minuccia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The resolution authorizing payment of Tim Harwood's accrued benefits begins on page 62 of your packet. The agreement with regulating districts bargaining unit stipulates certain payments upon retirement. Tim is entitled to the payout described in the resolution based on his time of hire. You may recall that one of the recommendations from the Inspector General report issued in April 2021 was that we present the terms and calculations of such payouts to the board for their information and review. We did this when former Administrator John Hodgson retired in June 2021, and we do so again today. As such, I ask you to approve this resolution, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have about it.
And I see that we know exactly what the payout's gonna be, and, we're not gonna go through that with the other. Okay.
It's a great observation, Mr. DeWitt, because this is why we spend no shortage of time and sit down and Tim crunches the numbers and I look at the numbers and we look at the contract and there's an exhaustive review and we've got it.
Okay. Can I have a motion approving a cash payout of unused annual and sick leave and contribution to health insurance premiums to Timothy Harwood upon retirement?
I will.
Mr. Byrd,
Second.
I'll second.
Mr. Candido.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved. Resolution to approve transfers in the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. Mr. Minucha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me mistake here in my notes, but bear with me for 1 second. It's a resolution authorizing transfers in the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget begins on page 65 of your packet. Thank you for your patience. Resolutions like this one arise from active management of the regulating district's budget. We seek to spend money within approved amounts authorized by the board. When circumstances arise where necessary expenditure is projected to materially exceed its appropriation, we search for funds that may not be needed as originally envisioned and ask the board to authorize me to transfer them where they are needed. I believe taking such actions is prudent and increases the likelihood that the regulating district will live within the overall budgetary limits authorized by the board. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about this resolution.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve transfer in the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget?
So moved.
Mr. Candido.
Second.
I will second that.
Mr. Hayes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved. Staff and committee reports. Audit Committee, Mr. Hayes.
We have a resolution approving BP8S to perform GASB 75 evaluation for fiscal year ending June 30,
Governance. It was
2022.
Yes.
Mr. Medici.
Yeah, they did.
We discussed this and presented this to the audit committee, who gave us unanimous approval and recommendation, and hope that the board will concur.
Can I have a motion?
I make that motion.
Mr. Hayes.
Second.
Second?
Ms. Allen.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved. Governance Committee, Mr. Candido.
Mr. Chairman, the Governance Committee has met earlier and has approved and forwarded to the board for its resolution, for its adoption, a resolution that authorizes the executive director to implement certain organizational changes and salary grade adjustments. Mr. Callahan can explain if anyone needs that explanation, or we can move to a motion right now to accept.
Let's move to the motion.
Thank you. I'll take a motion.
I will make that motion.
Mr. Hayes.
A second.
Ms. Allen.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved.
Second, Mr. Leslie had explained the gathering of the confidential evaluation of board performance, and it was fully explained, and I'm not sure if anyone needs to hear anything else from him, but that's up to him or them.
I don't have anything I want to say.
Okay. And third, which was the latest addition to the governance committee's agenda, is a resolution that has been adopted and forwarded now to the board for its approval to give the executive director authorization to sign a 3-month extension with Stillwater Associates on the lease at Stillwater Dam.
Do we have a motion to approve that?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second?
Mr. Hayes, Ms. Mr. Byrd.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved.
That was
General Counsel, Mr. Leslie.
So I would note that negotiations with Brookfield/Erie Boulevard Hydropower regarding the soon-to-expire reservoir operating agreement at Conklinville are progressing slowly. In June, Erie received the Walden New Gen appraisal report from the district, supporting an increase to $2.5 million in annual payments for Erie's use of the regulating district's 56 feet of head at Conklinville. We continue to press Erie for their appraisal, and counsel for Erie continue to press the argument that the regulating district's FERC license compels the regulating district to route water through Erie's FERC licensed hydroelectric generating plant at EJ West for no compensation. Erie argues that it must pay only for the authority to time the release of discharges and appears to value such at $77,000 per year. FERC considers EJ West hydro plant and the regulating district's dam and reservoir to be a single unit of development, and as such requires both to be licensed. The complete unit of development consists of all dams, powerhouses, impoundments, water rights, and land which are used in connection with such unit. In short, Erie owns the powerhouse, and the regulating district owns the dam, water rights, and the land. Despite Erie and its predecessors having done so continuously since the first reservoir operating agreement in 1927, Erie has indicated that they may cease to pay for use of the water rights. Subsection A of Article 402 of our FERC license requires the regulating district to operate with the goal of minimizing energy losses to affected hydroelectric projects by the aggressive use of storage. However, subsection J of that same Article 402, entitled Operation for Aggressive Use of Storage, requires the regulating district to make every reasonable attempt to limit releases not to exceed target maximum flows in the Hudson River below its confluence with the Sacandaga River, and to limit water releases from Great Sacandaga Lake below EJ West. As such, the regulating district's FERC license and the offer of settlement through which the operating curves utilized in that license were developed do not require the regulating district to pass water through EJ West. In fact, the target flows are all measured below that plant, specifically so that the regulating district does not have to give away fuel that allows Erie to generate electricity. Were Erie to own all of the elements of the unit, Erie would have to utilize the revenue generated at its powerhouse to fund and maintain the dam and reservoir, which create the head necessary to generate electricity. Unfortunately, Erie's current position would have the practical effect of reversing the out-year financial relief that Albany, Rensselaer, Saratoga, Warren, and Washington counties are expecting to receive as a result of the district's successful legislative advocacy, instead diverting those taxpayer savings back to Erie. Absent a shift in Erie's thinking, the regulating district may be forced to resort to the dispute resolution provisions of the offer of settlement, laying out the dispute to FERC. Further, the terms and conditions on Form L3 that are made a part of our license differentiate in Articles 11, covering headwater benefits, and Article 13, covering the use of a reservoir by a co-located hydroelectric plant, such that Erie's argument holds no water. That said, we're at $2.5 million, they're at $77,000. So we're pretty far apart. As the executive director said, Stillwater was not necessarily our worst negotiation. That said, any questions on Erie. Sorry for that long-winded explanation.
It's important. There's no more significant pending moment, I think, in the Hudson River area's finances, having achieved so much other clarity over the last couple of years. So certainly your council is very good to go through those details.
So, turning to Stillwater. The expiration of the ground lease and water usage agreement at Stillwater, without further extension, would compel a sale. And the negotiations regarding the district's purchase of that hydroelectric plant adjacent to Stillwater Reservoir are also progressing slowly. So basically, the parties' appraisals establishing the value differ by more than 15%. As such, the agreement compels the parties' appraisers to select a third appraiser to review the appraisal documents submitted to date. The central issue involves the impact of the rental expense on the calculation of net revenue, the projection of anticipated revenues beyond the conclusion of the soon-to-expire purchase power agreement, which the seller long ago negotiated with National Grid's predecessor, and the sharp fall-off in generation over the last 10 years when compared to the initial 20 years of the Stillwater Hydro's plant operation. Stillwater Associates seeks roughly twice what the regulating district's appraisal indicates the regulating district should pay, and that pretty much indicates why we're more than 15% apart. Any questions about Stillwater? At one point, one of the board members had indicated that he wanted to know what the various parties were offering, and I supplied that information to the board. If you want to go back and see what those numbers are. The balance of my report really talks to two concurrent use and occupancy agreements, one at Hawkinsville, the other at Indian Lake, which we have negotiated or are negotiating with DEC for use of their lands in connection with the rehabilitation efforts at each of those two dams, Hawkinsville and Indian Lake. Any other questions on my report? No. Very thorough. Sorry.
Compliance Officer, Ms. Ruzicki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report begins on page 69 and highlights my activities during the reporting period. First noting, I met with a consultant from the New York State Insurance Fund to discuss our policy and to complete an in-depth review of our last 4 years to identify loss and develop enhancements to our current program. Following the review, a safety survey was completed at Sacandaga Field Office and Comptonville Dam facilities to identify any risks that might need mitigation. Staff are addressing the risks identified, and we are awaiting a final report which will include risks, controls, and recommendations. We continue to work on the revised access permit renewal application. I have created a draft based on an invoice used by another state agency for a similar purpose. I'm working closely with the Sacandaga Field Office Senior Administrative Assistant to make sure we end up with a product that's both user-friendly and contains all the data needed for internal processing. Our database consultant is on board and can provide us with all the data elements we need for this new application, and we have identified an MWBE vendor that is available to print the new applications. I'll keep you posted as we make further updates. I completed the New York State Office of Domestic Violence Liaison training. As per the district's policy, Mr. Leslie and I are the designated liaisons. Finally, on pages 70 to 72, you will find the contract status sheets. They are included in each report for your review and satisfy the public authority requirements. If you have any questions on the items I mentioned or on anything in my report, I would be glad to answer those. If not, that completes my report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Minuccia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The CFO report begins on page 73 of your packet. as I expect to spend some time on the debt memo, I want to keep these comments very brief. We are through 2 months of the current fiscal year and generally in line with budget and year-over-year revenue and expenditures. I'm also happy to state that the independent audit for last year is on schedule, and we expect to be back before the audit committee next month with our auditors to present the findings. And I'm happy to answer any questions any of you may have at this time.
I have none.
Thank you. Chief Engineer, Mr. Poltran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're gonna need, discussion of pledge of security as well as approval of board member expenses. So I do the board member expenses first.
Certainly can do that. So we need a motion?
Yes, there are,
Well, do we need a motion for the pledge of security for the debt?
So that's just a discussion item.
Okay.
So if you like, Mr. Chair, we can take up the approval of board member expenses first, which does require action,
Okay.
and then come back to the pledge of security discussion.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve board member expenses?
So before asking the board members to approve, let me just say that this on page 114 of your packet, I present a signed affidavit breaking down necessary and reasonable expenses incurred by board members relating to their participation in the July 12, 2022 board meeting. Article 3, Section 2 of the Regulating Districts bylaws require the board to approve payment before any reimbursement can be made. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions?
I have none.
Can I have a motion to approve board member expenses?
Can I make that motion?
you're one of the board members that's collecting money.
I'll make that motion.
Ms. Allen, anybody else?
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Do we have a second for that?
I'll second.
Mr. Candido, thank you.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion approved. Now we need to discuss the pledge of security for HR BBRD debt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The debt memo begins on page 115 of your packet. There is a lot to unpack in this memo, and so I propose to start at a fairly high level and get a bit more technical and detailed as we move forward. Before getting started, I'd like to thank Rob Leslie, John Callahan for their help in working through these issues. I could not have written this memo without the professional advice of Ron Barlevav, the Regulating District's Bond Counsel, and Janine Rogers-Caruso, the Regulating District's Municipal Advisor. The Regulating District last issued debt via a public sale in 1989. It had done so previously the prior year, and we possess the transcript from that December 1988 sale. These bonds, issued in the amount of $500,000 in 1988 and $500,000 again in 1989, were paid off in July of 2004. Since that time, as all of you know, a lot has happened to the regulating district. The municipal bond market has also undergone many changes during this last nearly 20 years. During that period, the only debt-related activity the regulating district has undertaken has been the financing agreement with the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation, which we've discussed many times since it was created in November of 2017. We're talking about debt today because there is a necessary project, as you know, being designed for the Indian Lake structure, and we have proposed to finance it via a public sale of tax-exempt bonds. We anticipate undertaking this sale sometime in the third or fourth quarter of the current fiscal year. An essential element that credit rating agencies and prospective municipal bond investors evaluate before issuing a rating or deciding to underwrite the debt is the security a borrower pledges to repay the loan. These security pledges run the gamut, depending on the borrower's circumstances, nature of the project being financed, and the federal and state laws and regulations that govern how such debt is issued. As you've read in the memo, the gross pledge generally gives bondholders the greatest comfort and, in most cases, translates into the best terms and conditions for the borrower. Unfortunately, the regulating district's statute will require us to offer a more limited pledge. Potential implications of these restrictions may mean that any debt the regulating district issues to finance the rehabilitation at Indian Lake will incur a higher interest rate than it would if a gross pledge could be made. I regret that I can't give you today an estimate of the magnitude of that premium. Looking ahead, this means that any future rehabilitation projects undertaken in the Black River area will need to secure an outside or an additional source of funds, given the potential magnitude of such projects and the Black River area's historical and current sources and uses of funds. Nearer term, it also means that we'll be talking about this subject with the FC as we seek to convert the short-term financing arrangement into long-term debt in the next few months. And we will be back to you in the coming months with resolutions and formal documents we will be asking you to review and hopefully approve related to the public sale of bonds for the Indian Lake project. There's a good deal more in the memo and more I could and may say, but let me stop here and turn the floor back to you, Mr. Chair, for questions, which I'll do my best to answer, and any ensuing discussion.
Any questions?
Let me just note, and I don't know if this will prompt any questions or discussion, that I've been fortunate, apply that term loosely, to sit in on some of these calls with both Mr. Minicha and Mr. Leslie. This is a complicated issue, and it's certainly made more so by the nature of our existence, sort of these two areas with finances that I guess the Ghostbusters line, "Don't cross the streams," comes to mind. I don't really know what would happen, but certainly in this case, it does restrict what sort of pledge we can make, and as Mr. Minicha said, the attractiveness of the terms that we might get. So it's been a journey, I think, for me, certainly. Mr. Leslie has been around a long time here and had a good appreciation of what we may run up against in trying to find a way, I think, to issue a broader pledge than ultimately we're going to be able to do, regrettably. But I want to thank Mr. Minicha and, of course, Rob and the team, the consultant team that they've assembled, and for the great work in getting us to this point. And certainly, as Tim has said, more to come next month.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Chief Engineer, Mr. Fulton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report's on page 118. In general, all the Great Sacandaga Lake reservoirs are tracking right along historic average, and Great Sacandaga Lake is slightly above historic average, but below our target. We had about 80% of historic average rainfall in the month of August on Great Sacandaga Lake, lesser amounts as measured up in Indian Lake. And in the Black River area, we had about 157% of historic average rainfall at Stillwater for the month of August. And again, similar to last month, tracking as we would hope, and we'll be beginning to draw down the smaller reservoirs on the Fulton chain by the end of this month. And we'll continue to draw down the larger reservoirs in preparation for spring refilling. Additionally, our construction activities started at Hawkinsville Dam in August. Activities completed to date include contractor mobilization, clearing of trees, installation of security fencing, and installation of some of the turbidity curtain and sandbag cofferdam on the east side of the spillway in preparation for repair of the east abutment and construction of the embankment dam at Hawkinsville. That concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Could you just bring the Great Sacandaga Lake up to 766 at the end of October, November, and then after that you can drop it, okay? I just need to get my docks up closer to that.
We have reduced the release that's otherwise mandated of us for whitewater rafting that occurs throughout most of the summer, consistent with the offer of settlement. So we are storing a little bit more water now than we did on a daily average basis throughout most of the summer. So that, in combination with a little bit of the fall rain, might give you that elevation. But, not for too long, I hope, though.
Board members, questions, comments? None? Then can I have a resolution for the next board meeting, which will be October 11th, and where will we hold that?
Stillwater Reservoir.
Stillwater.
It'll be the 12th because the 11th is Columbus Day.
So the Monday is observed that week, and then the Wednesday is actually Columbus Day, but it'll feel like a Tuesday.
It'll feel like a Tuesday.
And it'll be a great time of year to be out at Stillwater Reservoir, where I understand we haven't had a board meeting for several years, or at least maybe 3 years.
Yeah. Okay.
And we will have video conferencing. We imagine that the auditors will take full advantage of that, but we encourage as many people as possible to attend in person.
Right. The executive order will have been expired at that point, and the open meetings law will require in-person attendance unless there is some emergency condition indicating that's not possible.
Sounds good to me.
Well said.
Okay.
Been there before?
Been there many times.
I was going to say. Yep.
So can we have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
We need a motion
for the next board meeting. Can I have a motion for the next board meeting, October 12th at Stillwater?
So moved.
Mr. Hayes, Mr. Byrd.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved. Can I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Hayes. Alan, Mr. Hayes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approved.
You gavel it out?
Yes, gavel it out.
Gavel it away.
There you go.
Thank you.
Megan,
We
can you
just
stop recording?